Long ago, the small village of Agumo sat beside a big winding river. The river gave life to the village by providing water for drinking, washing, and growing crops. But the elders warned to never go near the dark, still waters of the Iyoku, the forbidden river, which flowed into the main river. Bad spirits lived there, they said, and any who went close would be cursed. Aziza was a pretty young girl of 15-year-old. She had long black braids, dark eyes that sparkled like the morning sun on the river, and a smile that could light up even the darkest spaces. Aziza helped her mother fetch water each morning from the well near their hut. One bright morning, as they walked to the well, Aziza's mother stopped suddenly. She gasped and pointed to the path ahead. A massive snake as big around as a grown man's body was stretched across the path, eyes shut tight. "Back away slowly, Aziza," her mother whispered. "Do not wake it." But Aziza did not fear snakes. She had been taught they were guardians of the earth. So she walked right up to the giant snake and with a soft voice said, "Good morning, friend. We mean you no harm." The snake's eyes shot open, black as night. Aziza and her mother froze. But then the great snake simply gave a slight nod and slithered off the path into the bushes on the other side. From that day, Aziza had a special connection to snakes. They would sometimes follow her on her walks, silently slithering behind like scaly shadows. She would speak softly to them, and they seemed to understand. The other villagers first feared the snakes, but then came to see them as protectors when they were around Aziza. One morning when Aziza was 16 years old, she went to the well for water as usual, but this time her snake friends did not follow. When she neared the well, she was startled to see one of the elders standing guard. "Why are you here, Elder Karim?" Aziza asked. The old man frowned. "I was stationed here to stop any from drawing water until the river can be checked." "Checked? Why? What has happened?" Elder Karim stroked his long grey beard. "During the night, something troubled the waters of the Iyoku, the forbidden river. When the first rays of sun hit it this morning, the waters turned a deep crimson red like blood. We fear some great evil has cursed it." Aziza glanced over at the rivers. The muddy main river looked normal, but the small offshoot, the Iyoku, did indeed glow a deep, unnatural shade of red in the morning light, like hot, molten lava. "I must see it," Aziza said. She started walking towards the forbidden river. "No, child," Elder Karim called, hurrying to block her path. "The Iyoku is strictly forbidden. That is why we station elders here when it shows signs of danger. Get back to your hut until we solve this." But Aziza would not be stopped. There was a power calling her to the river, like an invisible root tugging her forward. "Do not worry, Elder. I will be safe," she said with a calm, assured voice that did not sound like it came from a 16-year-old girl. Elder Karim looked deeply troubled, his wrinkled face lined with fear, but he merely shook his head and stepped aside, making a hand sign to ward off evil. Aziza smiled and continued down the narrow path towards the Iyoku. As she walked, snakes of all sizes slithered out from the bushes to follow her. Forming an undulating, scaly parade line, the little girl who could speak to snakes. When Aziza reached the banks of the forbidden river, the water seemed to glow even brighter, like a brilliant red veil had been thrown over its surface. The snake stopped and simply watched. Aziza stood motionless for a long while, looking out over the crimson river. Then she began chanting in a strange language. That did not sound like the common tongue of the villagers. It sounded ancient, powerful, and almost inhuman. As she chanted, the red river waters began swirling and bubbling. Suddenly a form rose from the depths, a human-looking figure, but with the lower body of a massive fish covered in thick green scales. A mermaid, the other villagers who had gathered behind Elder Karim, to watch from a safe distance, began screaming and running in fright. But Aziza did not even flinch. She locked eyes with the mermaid and kept chanting. The mermaid was male, with a muscular human upper body, green, scaly skin, and sharp-finned ears. It hissed and slithered fully from the river onto the bank. Then it reared up its massive fishtail and let out a deafening roar that shook the ground. At that moment, all the snakes turned and struck. As one, the whole parade slithered toward the mermaid, with mouths wide and fangs bared. But with a sweep of its powerful tail, the mermaid swatted them all away like blades of grass. Aziza chanted louder and pointed an accusing finger at the mermaid. It let out another ear-piercing roar, sounding more animal than human. Then it charged straight at her. Back at the village, the screams had caused every man to grab a spear or blade. They rushed towards the river, fearing the worst for Aziza. "Kill the mermaid! Protect the girl!" Elder Karim shouted. When they arrived, their eyes bulged at the sight of the snake army surrounding. The massive mermaid, as it loomed over Aziza. The mermaid raised a clawed hand to strike, but with one final chant, Aziza threw her arms up at the mermaid, and it froze in place, as still as a statue. The snakes instantly relaxed and slithered away into the bushes. No one said a word. Aziza walked up to the frozen mermaid, now just as tall as she was, and placed her hands on its scaly chest. The mermaid's eyes went wide, and its jaws opened in a silent roar. Then Aziza did something that made every man's jaw drop. She leaned in and pressed her lips to the mermaid in a deep, passionate kiss. The whole village watched in shock as Aziza kissed the terrifying mermaid creature for what seemed like an eternity. When she finally pulled away, the mermaid's eyes rolled back in its head, and it slumped over, unconscious. Aziza simply turned and began walking calmly back towards the village. The crimson river water faded back to normal. "What? What sorcery is this?" Elder Karim gasped when she drew near. Aziza looked up at him with those enchanting, innocent eyes. "Fear not, Elder," she said softly. "I have tamed the great beast and broken its curse over these waters. We can drink from the river again." Without another word, she walked through the stunned crowd of villagers and returned to her hut, all the snakes faithfully following behind her. In the days that followed, no one dared speak of what they had witnessed. Aziza did not explain herself, and no one asked. Life went on as normal, but over the next few months, Aziza's stomach began to swell and distend. At first, it was easy to hide under her flowing robes, but eventually it became clear to everyone that the young, unmarried Aziza was with child. She has been cursed by the mermaid. The villagers gasped in hushed tones. Some feared the child would be a monster and wanted Aziza exiled from the village for her own safety during her birthing, but Elder Karim refused. "She is still the same child who has guarded and protected us all these years," he proclaimed. "If she has been impregnated by some dark magic of the Forbidden River, we must have faith in her." And so the villagers begrudgingly allowed Aziza to remain and give birth in her hut. They said prayers to the gods and ancestors, fearing what unholy spawn might soon enter the world. Finally, the day of Aziza's birthing arrived. The entire village waited with bated breath outside her hut, weapons at the ready should any foul creature emerge. Aziza's cries of pain echoed through the night as her mother and the village midwives assisted her. After hours of laboring, a final piercing scream rang out, and then the cry of a newborn baby. The villagers held their breath, gripping their spears tightly. But when Aziza's mother emerged from the hut, cradling a bundle of blankets, she had a peaceful smile on her face. "It is a boy," she announced. "A perfectly normal, healthy human boy." Gasps of relief and shock rippled through the crowd. Elder Karim went inside to see for himself. When he returned, he motioned for the villagers to lower their weapons. "The child is indeed human," he declared. "There is no dark magic or curse at work here over the next few weeks, despite the circumstances of his conception." The villagers came to accept Aziza's son. They saw he was just as any other newborn, with 10 fingers and 10 toes. Though he had his mother's enchanting dark eyes and bright smile, Aziza named him Kamari, which meant born of the river in the old village tongue. She raised him on her own with a little help from the village, but she refused to speak of how he had been conceived or who his father was. The years passed, and Kamari grew into a strong, healthy young boy. He seemed completely normal, except he never wanted to play in the river or even go near it, almost as if he feared it. On his 10th birthday, as the village was celebrating with song and dance late into the night, Kamari awoke from his sleep in a cold sweat. A force was calling him. Tugging him towards the Forbidden River, he knew he should resist, but it was overpowering. Slowly, with a blank, trance-like stare, Kamari made his way out of the village and through the bushes towards the Iyoku River. The snakes that had once been his mother's guardians slithered out and quickly encircled the boy, as if trying to protect or perhaps restrain him. But Kumari simply pushed forward in his days. When he reached the riverbank, the waters began glowing that unnatural, bloody crimson red. The snakes stopped and held back, hissing. Kumari paid them no mind. Stripping off his clothes, he waded out into the strange, glowing waters. He felt himself being pulled down, deeper underwater, until everything went black. The village woke the next morning to shrieks of terror. Kumari's lifeless body had washed up on the riverbank, his eyes still open and face frozen in fear. Kumari, the lone son of Aziza and her mermaid lover, was dead. The ground shook as Aziza let out a cry of agony that could have raised the dead. She fell to her knees in the mud, cradling her son's body and weeping. Elder Karim and the men stood in solemn silence. None could understand what dark forces claimed the boy. This was a tragedy no ritual or magic could heal. Just then, the river waters began churning violently, as if something huge thrashed beneath the surface. Suddenly, the monstrous form of the mermaid exploded from the depths. The villagers scattered in terror, grabbing weapons as the mermaid pulled itself onto the riverbank. With its massive finned tail and arms, it opened its jaws in a ferocious roar until it saw Aziza. The mermaid instantly froze in place, eyes locked on the weeping mother holding her dead son. As tears streamed down Aziza's face, something strange happened. The mermaid began weeping as well. Great heaving sobs shook its massive body slowly. Almost reverently, the mermaid crawled on its fins and stomach toward Aziza and Kumari's body. It nuzzled its head against the boy's cheek, letting out a mournful wail. The villagers could only watch in stunned, fearful silence as the legendary monster that had cursed their waters displayed human emotions over the loss of the boy. After untold ages of snakes, spirits, and the very river itself owing allegiance to Aziza, it finally became clear. She was the reincarnation of an ancient river goddess, and Kumari had been a demigod, the royalty of the river realm, born of her union with the mermaid deity. That was the only way to explain these unfathomable events. The mermaid looked up at Aziza with tears in its inhuman eyes. She gave it a small, solemn nod of acknowledgement. It then bowed its head to her and slid back into the river depths, disappearing for what was hopefully an eternity. From that day on, the forbidden river regained its natural flow, and the villagers paid it no more mind than the other waters that gave them life. And young mothers would whisper to their babes the story of the river goddess who fell in love with a creature of the deep and the blessing and tragedy that love brought. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you were captivated by the story I shared in this video, then make sure to hit that subscribe button below. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know when I upload new content, ensuring you never miss out on another compelling story. Don't forget to also turn on notifications so you're always in the loop. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.